betcha we are on location, and we are talking about making movies. Welcome. This is the Fright Club podcast, and we are back live in Columbus, Ohio, at the world-famous Gateway Film Center, where we do it live once a month. Yeah, I'm George Wolf.
I'm Hope Madden.
And we are from madwolf.com, and we love this. We're back once a month, second Wednesday of every month. We do the Fright Club Live, and we're seeing some great horror movie T-shirts tonight. Very nice. You're sporting the Blackula.
Yes.
I've got the Jaws. We're seeing The Thing. We've got Season of the Witch, all kinds of
High
stuff.
Tension over here.
High Tension, Frankenstein. And everybody that wore one is
Dracula.
in the running for some prizes that we'll do some drawings here in just a couple of minutes. So a bunch of fun, and we had a lot of fun last week talking about Skeletons in the Closet. It's our annual tradition since last year.
That's right.
Talking about some of the horror movie pass in the Oscar nominees. And boy, we dug up some dreck.
It's actually now become one of my favorite things about Oscar nomination day is I'll just as the nominees come up, and I'll think to myself, like 2 years ago, Leonardo DiCaprio, Critters 3, Tom Hardy, Minotaur.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Oh my God, so many bad movies to talk about. So we were excited this year, in particular, Casey Affleck was in Soul Survivors, which is just a god-awful mess. So we were excited to talk about that. And just dig into some of the really bad decisions that current Oscar nominees have made in their past. So that's always fun.
Paying their dues.
That's right.
It's always fun, yeah. So we were looking forward to tonight, which is we're getting meta. We're talking about movies, horror movies about making movies, and we've been asking for some suggestions. And Tom was ready to chime in with Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
And actually, Phantom Dark Dave seconded that. And no.
See?
You've got because the thing is, there are dozens and dozens of horror movies that are about making movies. It's just like it's a common sort of genre across all of movies, from Truffaut's Day for Night to Ed Wood from Tim Burton. I mean, I think it's just fertile ground for filmmaking anyway, right? Right, what you know. Well, if you're a filmmaker, you know about filmmaking.
Even this year, you could say, in a way, La La Land is about.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't really go on location too much, but there's always movies about Hollywood and about making movies.
Right. So we kind of really tried to narrow it down that it wasn't just. So if you take like the Scream trilogy, there are very meta films. They're about filmmaking. They're about horror movies, and the longer you get into the series, the more the Stab film series takes part. But the movie itself is never actually about the act of making a movie. So the same with the Blair Witch Project. You find footage and they're shooting footage, but the point of the movie is not to sort of draw your attention to the act of making movies. So this is one of the ways we pruned the list. That and just my personal taste. So those
one
were
of the
two
ways
criteria.
I'm making the air quotes. We prune the list.
You like these movies.
I do. Yeah, and by the way, I've got to point out that we're playing Hurt tonight. Hope had some bad chicken earlier, and she's queasy. And I still have a fat lip from the argument I got into about John Wick. No, that's not true. The skiing, we were skiing this weekend, and I somehow managed to hit myself with the end of my ski pole.
Or that's what we told police.
That's right. So, but the beer always helps. So, those are the ground rules. Those are the disclaimers. So, are we ready to get at it?
Yes, I think so.
Because as always, we're going to watch one of these tonight that made the list, and we'll start with one I particularly like because of what it talks about, and it's the story of a sound engineer's work for an Italian horror studio becoming a terrifying case of life imitating art. We got fans from 2012 Barbarian Sound Studio.
What I admired about you was that you were an artist, that you were doing this with a love.
Sounds a little watery. Is there any fresh marrow?
Francesco tells me you are trying to escape. There's no reason to escape.
Who's there?
Leroy, this is going to be a fantastic film.
This game's up, boy. No more jumping through hooks.
Don't be afraid. A new world of sound awaits you. A new world that requires all your magic powers.
I just like the subject of this because it deals with sound engineering, which is what I do a lot of every day in the studio. And also Toby Jones. You always got to love Toby Jones. Always great to see him.
He's so great in this movie.
He is.
He's so great as Gilderoy. Just this
great name.
incredibly mild-mannered British filmmaker who has in the past just done sound for documentaries. And he thinks that's what this is going to be, and he doesn't realize until he sees the first bits of film that it's a very violent, brutal gallo. I don't know how you pronounce it. How do you pronounce that? Giallo. I pronounce it like it's Spanish and it's Italian, and I don't know how to pronounce Italian.
Giallo? That's how you pronounce it? Okay, I guess it's giallo.
Okay, which is it's Italian for yellow, so I guess it makes sense. It kind of sounds like yellow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We're gonna dub in the correct pronunciation, Mr. Sound Engineer.
There'll be some random voice going, Giallo.
But he's so perfect for this movie because he's just being bullied and abused where he goes, and he won't stand up for himself, and he's such a great actor. He really, really is. But I think, for me, one of the reasons that I love this is that one of the things, and it took me when I was a kid, it took me forever to figure this out, that Italian horror movies dub everything. So, like, they'll have, if you're an English-speaking actor, you'll say your lines in English, and if you're an Italian-speaking actor, you'll say your lines in Italian, because they're just going to dub the whole thing in whatever language they're going to release it. And so it gives them all this really surreal feel about it. You're like, well, okay, that guy's lips kind of sort of match. What the hell is he saying, So to watch this, which is a movie about them doing that, dubbing this incredibly brutal, violent movie, is I thought was just fascinating.
Yeah, and it reminded me a lot of, remember Blowout?
Yeah.
The original, and then they had the John Travolta.
Yeah.
But especially the original, of how they keep getting, more particular and more specific about the certain sounds.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same storyline, but it follows the certain sounds where you uncover things. And I think you're right about Toby Jones. He's perfect for this part.
Oh, he's so perfect.
A guy that's put upon all the time and kind of meek, and stumbling into something he's wasn't quite ready for.
But if you haven't seen it, it's a really slow build, this film, and then it becomes more surreal as it goes along until, he takes on a different persona, and you're not sure what's real and what's not real. But so I'm not sure it's going to be everybody's cup of tea, because it's a fairly slow, somewhat surreal film. But Toby Jones is just brilliant.
Yeah, and it was directed by a guy named Peter Strickland.
Yeah,
who did a lot of Bjork videos.
Yes, he did.
Which are kind of out there.
Speaking of surreal.
Yeah, and a movie called The Duke of Burgundy. But
right.
Actually, the title of the fictional studio refers to Kathy Barbarian, who was a U.S. soprano who married Luciano Berio, a pioneer of electronic music and a key influence on the director.
I see.
So, yeah. So that's
nerding out on us, George.
Yeah, I just had that little fact off the top of my head that I read off this paper that I wanted to pass along. So yeah, it's very cool. I think you're right. It's maybe not everybody's, going to make everybody's favorite list because it is slow, a bit of a slow build. But I think it's really effective. It's number 5 on our list of movies about making movies. Barbarian Sound Studio from 2012. And another one, speaking of an editor, this is the story of a film editor who gets embroiled in a string of murders. From 2014, The Editor.
What about that editor? Didn't you tell me all the victims were missing the same fingers he was?
Sure, you have wooden fingers, but who doesn't at times?
He was an up-and-coming editor before I met him. Before he almost killed his assistant.
Ah, the editor's gonna kill me. That was his work print. Interesting how that name keeps coming up. Editor.
Here we go with the film talk again.
I really admire his films.
I don't want to see you around here anymore. You understand me? You take death with you wherever you go.
I was going to tell you it's the first good thing you've edited in an extremely long time.
You may have recognized a couple of faces there. Not only Udo Kier.
Woohoo, Udo Kier!
But Lawrence R. Harvey from the Human Centipede movies is in this. Not the Lawrence Harvey from The Manchurian Candidate. The other one from the Human Centipede. And this one, I remember this, and also Paz de la Huerta is in this, which if she's in it, it's effing crazy. Because that's just what she does. But I remember this got a lot of attention when it just came out of nowhere. Everybody was talking about The Editor. You got to see The Editor.
So it's a Canadian film group, writers and directors that work together on a lot of different films, and all of them are spoofs, like Manborg. Believe it or not, that's not a straight film. And the editor, is another one that it looks at Italian horror specifically, and it's hilarious. If you watch any Italian horror ever, you're going to be like, oh my God, this is so spot on.
Yeah, I think we've said before, Italian is not our favorite.
It is not.
Type of, and
but it's not like we haven't seen all of it. We've seen all of it, of it. And the thing about this movie, now the editor of this film is very loving in the way it recreates it. I mean, but at the same time, it just points out every ludicrous thing that happens in every Italian horror movie, and it does it so brilliantly.
Yeah, and actually, you'll appreciate this. A guy named Graham Humphreys. He did posters for The Evil Dead and Nightmare on Elm Street.
Ooh.
He personally designed 4 posters for this movie. So that's a little bit of a. I know you love the Evil Dead remarks, so that gets that in there. But it's. I don't know. Would you call it an homage? Hey, come on in.
It is, and it is a bit of a spoof. But it's
the movies are.
Yeah, it's a very smart one, and one again that's really affectionate to the source material. But it is so spot on and pointing out just every ridiculous turn of events that you're going to find in almost every Italian horror movie. And one of the things that it reminds me of is Fulci's Cat in the Brain, which is another movie about making movies. It's another Italian horror movie about making Italian horror movies. It's not nearly as good as The Editor, so just skip that and watch this. But it does make you think of it because, except that isn't intentionally funny, and this one is.
And in a way, it has those grindhouse type of trailers.
Yes.
It reminded me of Tarantino's the double feature of Death Proof and what's the one I'm thinking of? Death Proof and
Planet
Terror, yeah, because I loved those trailers. Those are so great. These aren't as good as those.
No.
But it has in that same vein.
Yeah, it does.
Having a lot of fun with it. And that is The Editor, number 4 on our list from 2014. Moving up to the one we're going to see tonight. A serial killer uses a horror video rental to lure his next victim from 2003, the last horror movie.
You see that there? We're making a film of this. We're trying to make an intelligent movie about murder while actually doing the murders.
You've got to stop it. All this stuff you're doing.
Whatever happens, this is going to be your last horror movie.
So really quickly, who has seen this movie?
Nice. Nobody's seen it. We love that.
Yay!
Well, that's very exciting. Nobody's seen the movie. So we've snuck away, as we do, so we can talk about it without spoilers, because it's maybe the first time that no one in the theater besides ourselves have seen the movie we're showing.
It is the first time, and I'm so excited about that, and a little bit surprised. I honestly didn't realize this film was as obscure as it is. I think people may confuse it sometimes with the last horror film, the 1983 Joe Spinelli stalks an actress to Cannes Film Festival.
Who you may remember
debacle.
as
Maniac.
Gazzo in Rocky.
That's right. He's also in a movie you probably did see. But he's Maniac in Maniac.
Yeah, definitely. So not that movie. This one is much, much better.
It is. It is. And it's it's reminiscent of Man Bites Dog, and also
the one it really reminded me of was Funny Games.
Yes.
In what it was trying to say. Now, it didn't say it as well for me.
Well, to be honest, I mean, nobody says anything as well as
Funny Games is so great.
Michael Haneke.
And Michael Haneke is so great. But that, I think those types of themes were on its mind. And
Absolutely.
It is clever. It is clever in the way it's done, but it's much more overt in telling you that's what it's probing instead of showing you.
Right. So the whole movie breaks the fourth wall.
Right.
And Max, our anti-hero, our protagonist or antagonist, he has taped over the movie that you rented from the video store so that what you're watching is his film of the murders that he commits. And it has been compared to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. And I can't go that far.
No.
Right?
Not nearly as grim.
No. And definitely with a dark sense of humor. But there are also some places where you think he's going one direction and he pivots.
Yes.
And it's nice.
Yeah, it is. It is especially... Well, we don't want to give away too much, but there are times when, you think there might be some victims and maybe they're not, and other times where you think there won't be victims, and maybe there are. So, yeah, I do like that. It keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, and he's, just this egomaniacal sociopath, but very charming, and actually, I've seen it several times now, but it was just the last time I watched it, I realized that he kind of reminds me of John Taylor from Duran Duran, which might be why I liked it in the first place.
Okay.
He's got a Duran Duran vibe about him.
Does he?
He does.
All right, I didn't see that. I didn't get that vibe.
You didn't have as many posters.
No, I didn't. I had the Farrah Fawcett's and the Charlie's Angels, and this guy didn't remind me at all of any of Charlie's Angels. But no, it is clever. It's very, as you said, it's very fourth wall. It's very, you're complicit here.
Yes.
And that's
which, like Funny Games, that's
exactly
the theme. That's the theme. It's like, why do you want to watch a horror movie?
But in this one, he just comes out and says that.
He does.
He comes out and tells you, you're watching this. Why are you watching this? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you?
Right.
Whereas Funny Games asks that, but in much more, ambiguous way and a much more effective way. But again, that might not be a fair comparison.
Right.
But it is. It's awful clever, and it's pretty short. It moves right along.
Yes, it does.
At its pace. And the guy does hold the lead actor does hold your attention, keeps it going. Because there's a lot of full-face close-ups on him when he's talking directly to the camera. And, it's cleverly done. And I guess I'm surprised as well that it's as obscure as it seems to be.
Absolutely, yeah. I hope that... Because, I think people are going to be excited about it. I think they're going to enjoy it. And I hope that more people seek it out. So it's the last horror movie.
Yes.
Not the last horror film.
Not the last horror film. And
it's a British film.
Yeah. And we're going to see that here in just a couple of minutes. But before we do that, we got to get back in there and give away some prizes.
Let's do it.
Wayne and Garth, hit it. Let's take this time really quickly. Those of you that wore the horror movie T-shirt, I gave you a raffle ticket, so get them out. We got a couple of prizes here. How about, let's see, for the last four digits, what is that? 7129. Who has 7129? Is that Bridget?
Woo!
All right.
And it's not just because you brought me a Leatherface doll. That's not the only reason.
Sporting the high tension. Let's see, sporting the high tension T-shirt this evening. All right, so enjoy that. So nobody's seen it. That's perfect. So we won't spoil anything for anybody. We will move right on to number 2. The filming of Nosferatu is hampered by the fact that its star, Max Schreck, is taking the role of vampire far more seriously than seems humanly possible. Shadow of the Vampire.
Meet Count Orlok.
I'd like some makeup.
Well, you don't get him. What is the matter with you?
Where did you find him, really?
Blood! Blood!
Academy Award nominees John Malkovich.
I will finish my picture!
And Willem Dafoe.
This is hardly your picture any longer.
Shadow of the Vampire.
How dare you destroy my photographer? Why not the script girl?
I'll eat her later.
More Udo Kier.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Anytime
Udo
a
Kier.
countdown can have 2 Udo Kier sightings, that's a bonus.
Yeah, this is such a good movie.
It is.
And it sports such great performances, and this role was tailored, especially written for Willem Dafoe, and he's
Who got an Oscar nomination for it?
So well deserved. He's
oh
fantastic.
my God, he's great.
And Malkovich is great.
He is. Malkovich is perfect, and they're so great bouncing off each other.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They are perfect. And as I may have mentioned at one time or another, Max Schreck, Count Orlok, my absolute favorite vampire of all time. Nosferatu is my favorite vampire movie of all time, and I loved this movie so much. It's so catty. When you watch it, it's so catty about filmmaking. It's just and the whole cast is great. Eddie Izzard is great. Everybody in it, but yeah, Willem Dafoe is spectacular, and like every small scene, especially the scenes that he has with the rest of the ensemble. So not just Murnau, but the rest of the ensemble are so sometimes really sad and moving. It's like there's underneath this really very funny, clever film, he has really sort of articulated how melancholy it would be to just be that ageless, to have no real recollection of anything and no real interest in anything. He's really sad.
And I think what's interesting, too, is it's talking about a movie that was made in 1922, but you even get the feeling that there's divas on the set back then.
Yeah.
I mean, he's treated as such a diva, you know. I'd like some makeup. Well, you won't get any. You know? I love that. And it has that undercurrent of melancholy, but also of humor throughout the whole thing.
It's very funny.
And it looks fantastic, the way the lighting is set and the shadow, which of course works with the movie within the movie, but it also works in the overall mood of this movie. And it's interesting because I don't really recognize the director as having really done anything since.
No, not
before
much
or
else.
since.
No, not too much. Elias Merhees, who did do a great job and is really, I think, primarily besides this movie, more famous for having directed videos for Madonna and Marilyn Manson.
Okay, all right. And he's got a cool name.
Does, yeah.
So where's he been?
Which is too bad because obviously he has talent.
Yeah, he does. And it's interesting, too, that the music that's played on the phonograph to set the mood for the actors in some of the scenes, they're actually playing the soundtrack of 1979's Dracula with
Frank Langella.
With Frank Langella.
Yeah.
That was done by John Williams. So
he's got such a hairy chest in that movie. No, but vampires shouldn't have a hairy chest. That's so 70s. The 70s were so hairy.
I remember when that version came out as a kid. I remember just hearing, all the women, all the moms just, ooh, got to see that.
Because it was like the era of Tom Selleck and Burt Reynolds and all these pelt-chested men.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you. My mom loved her some Tom Selleck. He started out doing those doing those commercials for something before he got Magnum P.I.
Chad Sexington.
My mom was like, ooh, that man. But
not something you want to hear your mom say.
But yeah, Shadow of the Vampire, a fantastic movie, and it's made the different lists here a few times because it's one we love talking about because it's just so well done and that's why it's added. It's more interesting to me that the director really hasn't come up with anything since then because it's put together so well.
It is.
Like you said, a guy that has talent, but haven't really heard from since then. But that's a good one. Number 2, Shadow of the Vampire. Takes us up to number 1. Another one we've talked about before. It's a film crew following a ruthless thief and heartless killer as he goes about his daily routine, but complications set in when the film crew loses their objectivity and begins lending a hand. 1992, it's Man Bites Dog. I have to say, the first time we saw this movie, another movie that came to mind was A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. The thing I think that so it's a documentary. Speaking of meta films, so it's a documentary about making a movie on a shoestring budget, made by documentarians working on a shoestring budget. The director plays the director. The writer plays the writer. The star is also a co-director and co-writer. It's a fascinating film, and the whole movie really is about filmmaking in a very jaded and ugly way. And of course, in the film, originally it's the objectivity, and they're going to follow the serial killer who happens to be incredibly charismatic and fascinating. And then he just makes them start helping, and then they just do help because the show must go on, and then eventually they just like helping. And so this is fascinating way to observe, sort of complicity and then bloodlust and then regret and then fear because now you're in it. Now what are you going to do? And it's, but I think one of the things, it's really violent. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I think is the most startling about it is the humor. It's a very, very dark comedy.
Very dark
and
humor.
Ugly.
And it's definitely has bits of social commentary because it's based, or it was inspired by a very famous murder case in France that got an incredible amount of media attention, and that's what this movie really looks at. Media and, as you say, as we see the lines blurred between the camera crew and the actual murderer, and they start becoming, guiding the action instead of just filming it. It really makes a statement about media and social attitudes toward what is acceptable.
It also periodically reminds me of Spinal Tap, because you know how the drummer keeps dying in Spinal Tap because the crew member, they just keep dying, and then they're like, well, he'd want us to soldier on.
Well, you can't dust for vomit. But no, it's really one of those movies that the more you see it, if you see it 2 or 3 times, you really pick out new things every time, especially new comments, new points they're trying to make. You get caught up in the sort of the charisma of the lead
Yes,
guy, who of
he's
course
amazing.
he is, and he certainly believes in his own charisma. He loves him some him, and how he just goes through life, and he's so interesting. But you definitely pick up a little more comments as you go along. But it's endlessly fascinating, and as I think we've mentioned before when we talked about it, the actual literal translation of the movie is it takes place close to your home.
Yeah,
which is something about this is. We're looking at it here where we are, but this could be anywhere.
Right,
and I think that's the point it wants to make. And it does it in a very darkly comic, fascinating way.
And often really ugly. But it's always entertaining. But
it is.
A lot of times it just sort of makes you feel dirty for
Yeah,
having
well, and
watched
especially the rape scene, which is one that reminded me of the rape scene in Clockwork Orange. Specifically. So, number 1 on our list, Man Bites Dog in meta horror movies about making movies. And we look ahead to a month from now. We're going to be right back here and celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And we're going to be watching Stitches.
Stitches!
And drinking, I'm sure.
And drinking. So, for those of you who are waiting for a more lighthearted romp, here we finally have one. Stitches is super funny and fun.
Exactly. So,
you know who's not going to come? Steve Perez, because it's a clown, so he's not coming.
Clowns.
I mean, he's not coming anyway because he doesn't live in this state, but he hates him some clowns.
Yeah, he wants them all burned to the ground.
He does.
But, so we'll get to that. And let us know what you thought about these. As always, keep the conversation going on Twitter. That's the easiest way. We're at MaddWolf, MaddWolf, and Mad Wolf Columbus on Facebook. And we hope to see everybody back here in about a month, second Wednesday of March. And this will be up on our website. This podcast will be up hopefully on Monday in a few days, as it always is. And the fine folks at Golden Spiral Media, you can find it on their website as well. All right, so we've got a movie to watch, and nobody's seen it, which is so awesome.
Excited!
So again,
so happy about
thanks
that.
for coming. Thanks for your great horror movie T-shirts. Love those. And let's roll the last horror movie. And until next time, I'm George Wolf.
I'm Hope Madden.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast.
Stay frightful, my friends.
You guys are awesome. Thank you.